Lance Picioane, welcome to Real Insight, and an absolute pleasure to have you. I've known you now for about 2 years, and we met under really fortuitous circumstances for me particularly, and I'll explain that to you in a little bit. But primarily, retired AFL footballer.
Call it retired.
Played 54 games for the Mighty Hawks.
58.
58 games for the Mighty Hawks. And definitely at a time when foundations are being laid and sort of that next generation of Hawthorn was coming of age.
Yeah.
Start us there, Lance, and talk about the Never Alone Foundation. Give us a rundown of the Never Alone Foundation and sort of how that came to be, and tell us a bit about your journey.
Where did we start? And that's the thing, right? People ask, I get that asked a lot.
Yeah.
You know, obviously doing so much in terms of the public awareness around who I am and what I do with the foundation and what my life's been. And it's been a real challenge, like everybody else. And we've got a journey and got a story to tell. My story really starts back from my teenage years, through just pretty much more of a social disconnection of who I was and how I was going about it and the people I was hanging around with and who I was, playing sport with or who I was going to school with, and sort of more disconnected from myself around, there was more to me than playing sport.
Yep.
And that became a real battle.
Is that a pressure? Is that a pressure that is put on you, that you're a sports person and that's what you need to live up to?
Kinda. When you're good, it becomes that.
Mm-hmm.
I was a overdeveloped Eastern European kid. I was a fully grown adult by the time I was 13.
Yeah,
right?
right.
So this is how my life was, and this is how I worked it through. Whether it was basketball, whether it was athletics, footy became, my sport. When I realised I wasn't going to grow anymore, so I had to give up basketball, sort of thing.
Yep.
But then my life still now, and this is the pressure and expectations of life, and this is the pressure and expectations now has been passed on to my boys. I played AFL. I wasn't a champion. I played hard. I did all that sort of stuff, and that's what I've been known for in terms of my career.
Yep.
But there's an expectation now of society in how it works to say, that's their automatic connection. And Connect Sport is a huge connection for everybody, and it's a thing that we can all talk about. It's a thing that we can all hopefully experience at some level. Yep. But having played at a higher level than a lot of people, their connection too is talk about it and the expectations and the stories that come from having played footy. So I played AFL for 8 years.
Yep.
3 different clubs. Went through all the challenges where you play at three clubs now. It's a norm. Yeah. Right. But back then it wasn't.
Yeah.
Now my boys 5 and 7, they know that Dad played footy, and Dad had a footy card and all that sort of stuff. But to really help them understand what was footy and what was professional sport and what was life back then, I'm pretty open about it with them and the experiences that come with. But the first question that I always get asked, when people find out that I have boys, is, are they going to play footy?
Are they going to play?
And then it's not about that. And that, I understand that's human connection and that's just a story, it's a question because that's how it works, right? But they'll play what they want to play. They'll do what they want to do. Like my dad played soccer for Australia.
Yeah.
So the question he would have got is, you got boys going to play soccer. I've got an older brother who played soccer as an under, I think it was under 10s. The culture around it, Dad pulled my brother out of soccer. We weren't allowed to play it. It's just how it worked, right? Could life have been different if I had played soccer? 100%. But, it's not about what could have been. It's about what you did. So, sort of the experiences playing footy was amazing, but it was also hell.
Yeah.
We talk about expectations, we talk about pressures, we talk about, injuries, the forms, social connection into a club, the timing of being at a certain club with certain people. Your mix and your chemistry with certain, coaches or whatever that comes with, or the staff or the admin, the president doesn't like you, or whatever it might be, right? There's a whole range of things that go on within a football club, the dynamics of it and the politics that come with it that people don't understand because they just haven't experienced it.
Well, from the outside, you're thinking, what else? Like you've made it. There's nothing else that you could possibly want to live for. Like he's living his best life. He's been drafted to the AFL. That's every young Australian boy's dream. Yeah. And the pressures that come with that.
It comes with that. But as I said, you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And this is like people's life experiences or whatever from business, wherever they got and how they've got to those certain positions. you don't know what you don't know, but you can only live what you've got. And you make most of those experiences as much as you possibly can. But there's always, it's not what you do on the field. What you do on the field is what people see and they feel, and that's the experience, and that's their judgment that comes from you as a person. It's the stuff that you're off field that you're dealing with and processing, and and as a young man you're still trying to find your way of life and what you're about. I got drafted when I was 17. I just turned 17 years of age, and I was shipped off to Adelaide to play AFL, start pre-season and all sort of stuff. Played my first game and I was like 17 and a half years of age, right? Against fully grown men.
Still a kid.
Yeah. Mate, I was, even though I said I was fully grown at 13, I was still a kid.
Yeah, well,
emotionally, mentally,
correct.
you're to that point. Even I'm 43 now, I'm still a kid.
So am I.
So, but that's life, right? So, the appreciation now, I look more now on the appreciation of what the journey was with being given that opportunity to play footy. But I was always going to be a professional sports person, and it didn't matter the sport. Like I was just not being an idiot, not being arrogant in how this works. I was always destined to play professional sport.
Yeah.
Just how my makeup was, how my head was going. Okay, my ability to actually execute on the field. My point of difference was that I was hard as a cat's head.
Yep.
And that's how I played, and that wasn't but that was the time. Could my game now translate to what the footy is played now? It's a different story.
It's a very different
But
game,
you train
isn't
and
it?
evolve, and you understand the systems that you work differently. So in the time that you're playing, but it's appreciation now is more that I get to coach my son's under-8 football team.
Yeah.
Being able to pass on the learnings, and this is what life's about, right? What's your footprint that you're going to sort of leave behind? And for me, it's about being able to sort of guide people with your experiences that you've had to be able to make their decisions in their life better. And if you can do that, and you can leave that footprint and your legacy on other people, especially the generations coming through, especially your own kids, being able to use that experience from what was a time, as I said, amazing and hell, to be able to say, okay, this is about not you becoming a better footballer, this is about you becoming a better person.
It's breaking a cycle, isn't it? Like, that cycle of just this is what is meant to be. Given then, you're an AFL player, you're in there, you're amongst the lights, you're doing a great job at Hawthorn, but behind the scenes, things aren't necessarily going beautifully.
No, and like it's the off-field stuff, actually, how the impact the off-field stuff has then on your own, if you're in a safe, you perform best when you're at your safest.
Yep.
Yeah. No matter what environment you're in, whether it be at work, whether it be at home, socially, professional sport, or community sport, whatever you're playing, wherever you're safest, you feel safest and more acknowledged, you perform.
Yep.
And that's how it works.
Yep.
So there's all stuff going on off field. Everyone's got relationship issues. Everyone's, there's financial stress. There's social disconnection. There's the overthinking mental health game that you're sort of playing or not recognising. We're talking 20 years ago. These types of conversations around emotions and mental headspace in terms of where you're at, they weren't being had.
Very common.
So you couldn't have those conversations. So, we talk about the fact that you can't deal with what you don't know what you're dealing with. So not being able to understand it within yourself to say something's up, but I can't talk to anybody about it to say what can we do better with it and how do we make this work. So there's a whole range of different stuff that was going on off field, but it was sort of it sort of became a real issue, not just when I was playing footy, but before. So as I said, teenage years, all that whole high school, sort of all the dynamics and the drama and all the crap that goes on as being a teenager, hormones pumping through, family challenges, social challenges, all that sort of stuff. But the only place that I felt safe was playing sport.
Yep.
So really now looking back, I do it a lot, and the reflection process is to say, okay, the experiences that I have now, where do I feel safest? How do I make that place feel safe? Not just for me, because it's about my boys, most importantly, and making sure that we're having those safe experiences so that we can get the best out of ourselves.
So, your journey inspired, as you said, a willingness or a drive to want to do better for others.
Yeah.
You walked from Sydney to Melbourne. How did that come
Thanks
about?
For bringing it up.
Yeah, and what was the motivator there? And you know, was that another one of those? This is for me, as well as for the message I'm trying to convey.
I think if you want to perform anything, if you want to achieve anything in life, you obviously your driving motivation is yourself. It's got to be. Because you're the one that's got to do it 24/7. You've got to put the effort in, the preparation, all sort of stuff, and then the reason why is you.
Yep.
Yeah. But the impact that it has, is to the greater community in whatever way that is. And that greater community can be just the direct person that is experiencing that with you potentially, or the hundreds or thousands of people or whatever that see it through social media and all that sort of stuff. It came about, and it was a real big thing that I needed to do, one for myself. So in 2011, I had my last suicide attempt, which is it's a common story how it works. I had multiple suicide attempts and suicidal thoughts for an extended period of time pre that. And it got to a point where 6 months before that, I nearly lost my leg. So I had staph infection from a knee injury that so I ruptured the patella off the bone, my kneecap was halfway at my leg, had it all attached, had staph infection, did all that sort of stuff, went back in. Anyway, got to a point where, and I was in the midst of my drug addiction. Yep. My mental health was at its all-time low. Obviously started putting those sort of relationships in there. And then nearly losing my leg and going, okay, bang, and then had that last suicide attempt in October 2011.
Yep.
Getting through that process to say, okay, what is my life about? Because I had that conversation with somebody who is really important in my life, and with my wife, of recognising the fact that I needed to do something about my life. So got the help, put all the processes in play. So my recovery process then started. And that was still over a probably 4 to 5 month period.
Yep.
Working through that, and then I go, okay, well, walking then became my medication, right? And that was a part of my therapy. That's how I worked it through. A lot of journaling. I was doing a lot of gratitude practices. I was reading Buddhism books. I was doing all this sort of stuff. Going, how do I need to make the changes in my life for the betterment of my future? So I did that, and walking then became my thing. I became the walking guy. Like first thing in the morning, I'd do 10Ks. Last thing at night, I'd do 10Ks.
It's like Forrest Gump.
Just pure Forrest Gump without the hair.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then I'm going, okay, well, and then I was there go, okay, I'm going to start the foundation. And Love Me, Love You Foundation is what we started with. And the Love Me, Love You has come about from, as I said, from the reading of the Buddhism books. It was just going, okay, how am I understanding the knowledge of being myself and caring and loving myself before I can actually accept and acknowledge the fact of what life is about for others.
Yep.
And it really became a sort of really big mantra of how I lived my life for that period of time and coming through. And then we launched the foundation. I thought, well, I need to make some noise here about what we're about, why we're here, and not just another footy bloke trying to do a thing. And that was the thing. It was a big part of that, right? Not just another footy guy doing this thing.
Yep.
Putting it into a position, and I said to somebody, because I had the first idea I was going to do 40 marathons in 40 countries and do all these sorts of things, but I'm built like a fridge and I can't run.
Yeah.
Right? So
puts a damper on
it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, well, I can do Sydney to Melbourne, surely. So 900 Ks, the preparation and training that I put in for that was ridiculous. I was doing I was running marathons in an altitude room. I was doing all that sort of stuff, just to a point to, I was training 10 times a week. In the build up to that walk, I stripped down to, I was like 85 kilos. I was fit as. Got to a point where I knew that, and you relate to it, understand it really well, Mike, is the fact that when you're in your life, when you become something, nothing's ever enough.
Yeah.
So you put the efforts and the preparations in play to make sure that once you can achieve something. But it wasn't for me about achieving me getting from Sydney to Melbourne. It was me going, okay, if I wanted to, I can go back and be okay. And this is, I think, where we get lost in life, is that people go, I just need to achieve that.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the effort to just get there. But you got to put the effort in to get back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you put all the things in play, make sure you're doing all the right things, you're investing in yourself so much. But the biggest learnings that I took from the walk was the fact that I couldn't do it by myself. And this is what life's about. You can't do life by yourself because it's just so much harder.
Yeah.
Being able to accept the support, accept the help, accept people walking your path with you, and being able to acknowledge and be grateful for the fact of people in your life and the journey that you're able to live to make sure that you can get there and you can get back.
And the thing about that story I think I love the most is the role that your mum played in that story with you. I mean, how good are mums? You've met my mother.
Yeah.
And
Superstar.
yeah, and for the folks listening, I met Lance through the early stages of the Never Alone campaign, which was part of the Love Me, Love You Foundation. And there was a request put out just for people that had an associated experience with mental health and suicide.
Yeah.
In my family, I lost an uncle, my mum's brother, to suicide when I was 19. He was early 40s, probably our age.
Yep.
And then 7 years ago, my stepfather, so my mum's husband.
Yeah.
And my mum is relentless when it comes to life, and one of those people where I think, how do you do it? How do you manage to get up and just keep pushing? And she's always telling me that I'm, the main motivation behind that, which again is one of those things that it can be a little bit heavy if you don't recognise the gratitude in that. Yeah. So in particular, your relationship with your mother and the drive and the connection, in being able to do something like that together.
Yeah.
How does that affect
Huge.
you?
Like, I say it publicly. I'm not afraid. I'm a big mummy's boy. Like my mum is one of my best mates. It's
exactly
how
the same.
Life works, right? And the relationship that I have with my mum is not just from being through the challenging times, but to be able to celebrate the successes that we've had together. Is one of the first people I call to talk about anything, whether it be a challenging day or whether it be this has been a good thing. That's a relationship that I have with my mum. And when I said, and I didn't even think about it, right? Because when I said I'm going to do this walk from Sydney to Melbourne, the first thing she said, well, I'll drive the car. I'm like, that's, you grow up and, now being a parent, you know what you do for your kids and without question. And for her to be able to say, yep, bang. And I don't think she really thought about it because driving a Kia Carnival with a trailer on the back full of our goodies for 6 kilometres an hour, between 50 to 70 kilometres a day.
Yeah.
Making the lunches, the dinners, all the washing, all that sort of stuff, just so make sure that I had the best opportunity to do what I needed to do. And it was, I think her bum's still numb, right, from sitting in the car for that long for that process. So there's only one day that she sort of nearly hit me because her leg went a little bit numb and it went sort of to the accelerator instead of the brake.
Oh, yeah, right.
So it's, but it's this is what you do for your people, right?
Yeah.
It's, it doesn't have to be the biggest of things. And this is what we're trying to help people understand is that you don't have to create the biggest of events to have the biggest of impacts for people. It's the little things that allow you to do that, and that's the feelings you get, and the consistency of that, the consistency of your little efforts and your little cares and your little loves and all those sorts of things. That's what the greatest impact comes from.
Yeah.
And that makes it a more sustainable and loving and caring relationship. So.
In particular, I really like when we talk about addiction and substance abuse, the modern sort of teachings and philosophies that are coming from that, where we talk about the way we used to treat addiction was you put someone in a mental ward or, you throw them out of the family until they do better. And we're learning more and more that the opposite of addiction is actually connection and community and how that is becoming the healer for people that are so separate. What can you speak to in...
Huge on that. It's but life's about connection, right? Everyone's addicted to something. Level different. And addiction is on different levels, right? So there's different where people are, not so much a little bit addicted, but you're still addicted in whatever sort of process or behaviour. So the big thing that we talk about when talking about dealing with a mental health condition or dealing with addiction or substance abuse or alcohol abuse, it's about the connection to yourself and why you're there. Yeah. And this is what I felt is, why am I here? Why am I doing this to make sure that I can feel better? This is not making me feel better. So the connection. So we're all driven by community, right? So the mental health is measured by the energy between people. the more I withdraw from that, or more toxins I put on that, which is, addictions, mental health diagnosis, more I put in there, it actually drives the separation between people, and it drives separation between your community. The more connected we feel, the better we feel. So, the hormones and the chemicals that are released from connection, if done right, will outweigh the chemical reaction that you get from that addictive or that addiction that you have to something, whether it be gaming, whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, whether it be smoking, whether it be too much sugar, talk about food, all those sorts of stuff. The actual connection community as a human energy, if you thrive with that, allowing it to be a part of your life, it creates a motivation to keep moving. Yeah.
Because we're inherently tribal beings, right? Like we've just evolved to this massive society in such a short amount of time. But you go back a few hundred years, we're about...
Yeah, it's the tribe, right? And still, the people that do it well today are the people that know their tribe and what they're doing with each other, not just for each other. Okay, as I said, it's with each other. Yeah, we're in this path together. Sometimes you go off the path a little bit, but it's about those people being able to bring you back with it, without judgment. The full respect of who you are, the trust that you need, and then make sure that path is a safer opportunity for you to walk. It's going to be some bumps in the road, and that's perfectly fine. But we talk about in dealing with addiction, is that in a mental health diagnosis, same thing. I'm talking about it in the nicest way possible, is that we keep treating the effect, the outcome.
And not the cause.
Not the cause. Get to the cause, deal with that, acknowledge it. We talk about acceptance, acknowledgement, action, right? There's the 3 steps of dealing with anything. Accepting the fact of what this is, why am I here, how that works, acknowledging the feelings and the experiences that come with that. Then the action is how am I actually processing that to make sure that I'm in a better space. And that's why people lapse all the time. And they do. And it's just the given, right? Because we talk about the honeymoon period when dealing with or supporting people, is that all of a sudden they're being supported and they're feeling that, because you talk about connection community. When you're being supported, you have those two C's, right? Then being able to go, okay, and then the chemicals release, and then your mind's clearing up a little bit.
I'm better now. Everything's
better. Bang, and then you're driven back, and then you're out. Oh, you're forgetting the pieces that you're actually putting in play to make sure it works for you, and then you sort of lapse back into it because there's a certain trigger that you haven't acknowledged in your life to say, okay, I need to be aware of it. I'm not saying I'm steering away from it, because if I try to just sort of put it under the rug, you can trip over that rug sooner or later, right? So it makes it worse. So you drive that connection into yourself, but you talk about your community, but your community needs to be able to drive in with you. But it can't drive in with you or can't walk your path unless you open the path. You've got to open yourself to the people, right?
That's the other big thing is, and particularly with me, we were chatting earlier, over the last few months, I've been diagnosed ADHD. And the amount of symptoms that come from that, one of those is that thing of struggling to be able to relate to people, and therefore isolating, thinking that you're doing them a favour, but you're actually having this negative effect on yourself.
Yeah. That becomes that feeling of burden, on yourself. And
I don't want to weigh on the people around me.
Yeah. So especially as a male in this world as well, like, females, males, it's society issues. I'm not saying it's not that it's not.
Yeah.
Right? But as a male, historically, and evolution of life is, you talked about the tribes before and your role in the tribe and how it all worked, and sort of it becomes this big sort of macho brave sort of thing that, there's a problem, you solve it, you make it work. You're a provider, all those sorts of things. And that's perfectly fine, because everyone needs to understand how they play their role in life, in their role in their community. But when you start hitting at your identity or who you think you are as a person, because society has expected you or put you in this box to be this type of person.
Yep.
And as historically, as an Aussie male in this world, it's been tough, hard.
Yeah. Don't talk about your feelings.
Don't talk about feelings. Don't talk about emotions. Don't talk about the fact that, showing weakness. It's not showing weakness. It's just, the true courage. I had this conversation with my son this morning. He asked about the word courage.
Yep.
Because what's courage mean? And it's about the ability of the resilience and the strength that you need to show through a challenging time, so it doesn't become your weakness, it becomes your strength, right? So to be able to explain that to a 7-year-old and for him to go, I get it.
Yeah.
Because we're open to those conversations. So, and when we talk about, cultures of, being in sport before, and it's been brought up a little bit lately that, like, I'm not your average male today, right? I look like your average male, bit better looking. No,
Definitely better looking.
But I am sensitive.
Yeah.
I'm open. I'm vulnerable. I care. And that's not been the way that we historically have known a male to be.
And that's, I'd love to stop on that for a second.
Yeah.
Did you, I've always been the same. And did you find that it was just very hard to be that person when you were young? My biggest challenge at high school was being myself because, again, the boys that I'm hanging around with, they're not about that level of connection or about that level of, being able to relate. So then you start feeling like something's wrong with you.
Feeling more disconnected from it all. Yeah. I don't know, to tell the truth.
I'm not sure I understand.
Look, she doesn't get it.
Siri's all over it. She doesn't understand anything, Siri. But I'll tell you, you'll get an Instagram post or something about the fact that of seriousness and vulnerability soon.
I better actually, I don't know, I'm very unprofessional, Lance, in not muting this thing.
That's all good.
Go.
Anyway, so I don't know, and that's the honest. Like because my life become so much about my sport, and that's where I felt like I'm going to just show the world, you're going to have to like me because I'm going to be good at sport. That's just how I went through life. Because I had a total disconnection with, being at primary school, the big kid, I was always fighting. It was, my parents always, getting me called up because I was causing trouble all the time.
Yep.
Then I got to, a new school and, had some challenges socially, and I'm going, well, I just wanted people to like me. That's just what we do, right?
Yep.
So you start doing something that's not you, and you start feeling or experiencing life that isn't you, but you don't know that at the time. Like I was an early teenager, right?
Yeah.
So we still do that now.
Yes.
As people, we still do things to make sure that there's no bad energy between people, that we make sure that we're liked by, majority of people. But I think as you get older, and now I'm at a stage now from all the experiences that I've had and the experiences that I've had to deal with and understand through the Never Alone Foundation, which was Love Me, Love You, in understanding people's challenges of life and the gratitude that I need to be able to work through that because, I talk about suicide every day. I talk about people that are, have to be hospitalised through their mental health diagnosis, people's lives that have been sort of actually absolutely broken down from the fact that they can't deal or can't get supported for their mental health diagnosis, or the fact that just hardship just is every part of everyone's day, right? And I take a lot of that on from a lot of people, a lot. And people then feel, we'll talk about the burden part. They go, I don't mean to burden you with this, and it's and I get it all the time. And I say to these people, say to everyone, you're not burdening with me on me. I understand it. I can understand the challenge of life. I understand what you're going through because I'm not you.
Yeah.
And if I'm just an ear that you need, or I'm a hug that you need, or a high five, or a fist pump, or a handshake, or whatever that you need right now, that's perfectly fine. You're not burdening me with anything. And as society, we need to get to that, past that fact of, I'm not here for judgment on you or the decisions that you make, but if you bring bad energy to me, I don't need you in my life. And people get weird with me saying that because you want to play the victim in this world, you're not going. I don't need you.
No.
Yeah. And I say this in the nicest way possible. And this is the fact of, but then people will come to me and then they'll pull the mental health card. I thought you would have understood more than anyone, but I do understand.
Yeah.
But it's not about the mental health card. Don't play that on me. You're playing the victim on this process.
Yeah.
Let's understand. This is the experiences that we're all working through. If I can help you. And that's not from giving you advice. I can help you by just listening to what you need to talk about. That's all that needs to happen here. you also have your people in your tribe that you need to be able to communicate that with. I might not be a part of your tribe, but I can be a part of your path.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to talk about the burden thing again, it's about being understanding, okay, we have these conversations without judgment. We're talking about these conversations with full respect and trust to the fact that these are conversations that are needing to be had. And if we are able to talk about, as you just explained before, being diagnosed with something, it's not about labelling it, it's about understanding it.
100%.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So we talk about when people go pull a mental health card, which people, they do, and that's their life. But it's not about the diagnosis, it's about the understanding of why. So how have I got through this, the experiences, this answers a lot of questions, but what am I going to do with that? As I said before, awareness, acceptance, acknowledgement and action, making sure that it works and understanding. Don't play the victim.
With the amount of work that you do with Never Alone, obviously, to your point before, people want to talk to you, people want to understand your experience. Does that itself become something that you need to manage well in not taking on too much, making sure that, you've got the mental bandwidth for your family and things like that? How do you best manage that?
I've become really good at that compartmentalising it all.
Yeah.
Right? That's the conversation, that's the process that's there. That's perfectly fine. I don't need to take that on because that's not my experience. That's your experience. And being able to say with people, this is your experience. I'm here for a conversation. I can help you. And if you would like advice, I can help you to a point of what has worked for me, not worked for you, because I don't know you. Yeah, in terms of what really is going to sort of, but we can create opportunities, create understandings. It was a real battle for the first probably 5 years of doing the foundation and taking it all that on because I still wasn't in a really good space.
Yeah.
I was in a better space, but I wasn't in the space that I am now. I'm in a space now where I'm totally comfortable with my life, what I'm doing, where I need to go, I'm striving through, and it's become a big part of my life because I have my kids. They give me a great perspective of life and what life's about.
And there's this gravitas about you. Like even when we first spoke on the phone, it's funny that the conversation that we had came at such a fortuitous week. It was a really bad week for me. Yep. And you talk about those moments where you're feeling isolated, you're feeling alone, you're feeling like there's nothing to contribute to. And just the conversation that we had on that phone that day, putting me on a path where I could then contribute some of what I've experienced to others, that's a shift. That's a massive shift for someone. What's the goals and the objectives of the foundation, and how do you present that to people that join?
So, and this is a big part of why. So, as I said, 10 years ago, we founded as the organisation, as a charity called Love Me, Love You Australia. That's what we were called. So 10 years on, we've changed, we've shifted to a point where we're now called the Never Alone Foundation. And Never Alone has always been our tagline and a way it works. It's trademarked and all sort of stuff. But the messaging of Never Alone gives us a better position for people of all industries, all communities, all different organisations, all programs, all sort of stuff. What we want to do is create more accessible platform and collaborate with other organisations that we show the message that we are never alone. Because the more we can support each other, even those times in devastation, challenge, hardship, wherever you're at and you're at the lowest of points, you can feel the message of never alone. Because loneliness, withdrawal is the biggest thing that's actually going to kill people in the years to come. And we found that from the disconnection that we had through COVID period, right? So being able to shift that sort of culture and understandings around it, what we do at Never Alone is the collaboration piece is huge. Now, there's organisations, the not-for-profit world, the mental health world, suicide prevention world, it's busy. It's a real busy platform. It's a real busy sort of sector. We're talking about what needs to be done more in schools. How do we actually understand that mental health and everything that works around that mental health umbrella? Why isn't it a subject? Why isn't it something that all kids are learning at all times and a consistency of it, not just me coming in or an organisation coming in and doing a session
once every 6 months,
for 45 minutes and going, oh, this is amazing. You walk out the door, the kids are like, what was that about? It's about being able to develop and actually work through with sports and community clubs and organisations to make sure that they have accessibility information, accessibility of support work that needs to be had for those people. the corporate sector it's a whole new world of just the opportunities that are available in there. But it's not about the Never Alone Foundation coming into those corporate organisations or community organisations and being able to say, okay, we're going to change your world by me coming in. But it gives, we talked about, gives you a perspective of what we need to do for each other and being able to make sure we have the right resources accessible to people, the connection that we need that conversation to be had with, who they can have that with, how do they actually work a mental health framework around that and understanding the resources that come with that. Mental fitness is a huge topic. It's sort of evolved into that point where mental health is understood as a mental fitness sort of thing. We talk about social, physical and emotional health, how that all works, and that sort of creates a mental health energy and platform, right? So us as an organisation, our aim is to work with organisations to make sure that they have the right access to resources and information.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We're not a blueprint, because as soon as somebody says in the mental health world that they've got the blueprint to make sure it works for you, shut the door.
Yeah.
Because no one's got a blueprint.
Because we're all so different.
Everyone's different. Yeah. The evolvement. So we talk about the framework, creating an opportunity of a framework of understanding what looks like for the different activities and how do we actually experience those. Comes back to the acceptance, acknowledgement and action thing, right? So I'm accepting of the fact that this is things that I need to be doing. I'm acknowledging how I'm going to feel when I do these, and I could feel, and being able to action it. And you keep going through that sort of cycle, making it work. So, the biggest part that myself, is that I can't deliver unless I do. And I got to do for myself. So I've evolved my life and who I am. I'm 43 years of age. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 2 boys. I still get up at 3:45 in the morning, 7 days a week, and I go and train my ass off. Yeah. And I meditate. I do my breath work. I have my time. I work my situation. I drink 3 to 4 litres of water a day. People go, why do you do that? Well, hydration is a huge part of it because 80% of our body is made up of water. So you keep topping yourself up, fill your cup up, as I say. I don't drink alcohol, I have a little bit of chocolate here and there. Nutritional value of life is not just about the food, but the energy and the environment that you're actually feeding yourself. Yeah. I really make sure that I'm doing those sorts of things, and it creates a simpler way of me better managing my system. If I can live that, then I can talk to you and I can talk here, we can talk about it, and it creates an understanding for people to go, oh.
Yeah.
And I like people... those OF moments.
Yeah,
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, love them.
Yeah. I've had about 20 of those in the past 2 months.
But that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
If you can do that and accept that moment, what am I going to do with that? It's about, because we talk about, bring it back to the honeymoon period, right? So straight when you have those OF moments, there's a honeymoon period that follows that. They go, but then it's about the motivation of actually keep doing it.
Yeah.
What am I doing this for? Why am I doing it? Who am I doing this for? And we can create more motivation around it, not being an inspiration. And I love this. I love the hate and love I have for this word inspiration. Is inspiration lasts a click of a finger because it's that OF moment.
Yeah.
But what actually makes your moment more is the motivation of actually doing it on a consistent basis, being able to move forward with it. So.
And that involves that level of discipline too. I always like Mike Tyson's statement around discipline is doing things that you hate. But doing them like you love them.
Yeah.
And that's been something that...
Can you give me the voice with Mike Tyson?
I can't do that.
I can't see that. I've heard it many times, and I love Mike, and I love his actual, for what he was, and so to hear him now to talk about those sorts of things.
Where he is in his life now is, again, it's one of those things that's just so beautiful to observe because he's so self-aware. Yeah. To the point where you see things go dark, where he gets emotional talking about how he used to be. Yeah. But he's become this, this real, from the guy that was the scariest guy on the face of the planet for 2 decades, is now this soft, humble, marshmallow sort of cat that's teaching people just be yourself. Get to know yourself.
Yeah. And that's a hard one, right? Because we were talking before off air. The world that we live in now is this comparative society of what life should be like. Yeah. There's social expectation, the pressure that comes with actually being something. If you can't get done something in 30 seconds, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Right. So to find out who you are, sometimes you have to go to the depths. You know, you have to be at the bottom. Hopefully that's not the case though, right? Because why does somebody have to get to that lowest point of life to go, okay, this is what I want to be, or this is what I should be. This is who I am. But it's when the problem that we have is that when people get to those, start dropping down to that level, and they're not recognising it, and they're not recognising, they're not acknowledging it, and not acknowledging the fact that they're not themselves, they're not with the people they need to be with, they're not working themselves to a point where they're actually going to get benefit out of their life. And actually then they can't leave that legacy behind. Everyone's got a legacy to leave behind. What impact you have on this world is obviously you only know that when you leave the world.
Correct.
But if you can understand how you actually make an impact on everybody's life, more importantly, you impact your own life every single day, and it doesn't have to be the big event.
No.
Yeah.
No, even like, you know, my role in this business is Director of Technology. And
it's a nice title.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
For a technology business, that's not bad.
And I love tech. But leadership for me was the thing that I started my career as a musician and worked in those circles for many years. And then I fell into corporate, and watching a good leader, you know, and the things that a good leader can do for people, that was always my motivator. Yep. And in the past couple of years, having joined this business, it's one of those business that it's an echo chamber for that. The culture here is about letting people be the best they can be. It's not about come to work, be at your desk at 9, you know, do a full day's work and then, you know, take off and take your 4 weeks annual leave. And being able to put people on paths where, okay, like you're feeling like you're not meeting your objectives or your career goals now. How do we make sure that happens in 2 and 3 years' time? It's not about snapping the fingers and saying, oh, cool, I'm going to fix everything for you. But to your early point, understanding people and the desires and the drives that they have to be fulfilled, because everyone wants to feel important. Everyone wants to feel valued. I consider my job now to really just be like the megaphone for that, you know, listening to people's desires and then being able to help them on their journey. That's more of what I'm here to do other than to do techie stuff.
Yeah. I think and so the chairman of the foundation is a bloke called Michael Snyder, right, who's the MD.
MD of Bunnings?
MD of Bunnings.
Great guy.
Right.
Great guy.
Super fella.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, he goes, so he's in charge of Bunnings Group, right? So 55,000 people, Australia, New Zealand wide.
That was my first ever part-time job as Bunnings.
Was it Bunnings?
Yeah.
Surprised you left, because not too many people leave Bunnings once they're in there.
And I've gone on record on a previous podcast. We were talking about, like, you know, the things that you can learn as a youngster in business. Bunnings is amazing. Like what that teaches you about work ethic, customer service, teamwork, like. Yeah.
So his biggest fun, and he's brought up to me a couple of times, it's not about giving a man a fish, it's about teaching him how to fish, right? So, and that's the guidance as a leader, when you talk about your role here, is about encouraging and empowering people to be able to make those choices and decisions and actually fulfill them from their own actions, yeah? So people automatically say to me a lot with, you know, and I know Mike, and Mike's a mentor and a great friend of mine for a period of time now, which I'm eternally grateful for, but as I am with every other experience of my life that I am for, you know, in terms of the people that are in my life, I'm eternally grateful for the experience that and the impact that they have on me. And his openness is the thing.
Yeah.
His openness to have conversation, to support, to be open, to give, is what actually I believe in terms of being able to be a leader of not just your business, but in terms of your family, in terms of your community, in terms of your sport, or whether you're at, is your openness to give, and openness without judgment, and openness without, openness with respect, and making sure that we're in this life together. And he said to me a couple of times, he goes, but I'm not as good as my people. And he goes, it's not about the person that's working casual hours in, the back end of Queensland sort of thing, that, who's one of my people.
Yeah.
I can only directly impact the people that I can directly impact.
Yeah.
But if we're doing that the right way and that sort of ripple effect flows through, then everyone has that impact. Everyone creates that impact. Everyone sort of feels and is experiencing that impact from the top down. Leadership is from the top. Culture is built from the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
because the people on the ground in life is what actually makes things work. So you're only as good as your people. You invest in your people more, whether it be in business or at home. The more you invest in your people, the better your product's going to be.
And that was definitely something that I always felt, in that organisation, because it was one of those things where they were very much about that culture, because the understanding is quite clear. I've worked for businesses that have bad culture. And
Not here.
Not here.
Nope.
100% no. but some businesses, and it's that they kid themselves, because the balance sheet still looks good. Yeah. So as long as the balance sheet's coming through okay, yeah, we're still profitable, we're still making money, we've still got jobs, then everything's okay. Meanwhile, your people are falling to pieces.
Yeah.
And, people that feel not supported in a business, to your earlier point, we talk about community and the involvement. Everyone wants to feel like they're contributing. You've got to create a framework for people to be able to contribute. Otherwise, they're just going, well, what am I here for?
Yeah.
And how do I translate to what it is that the objective is? Yeah. Very similar to things like team sports. It's everyone has a role to play, and you've got to understand how you interact with all those other roles. But then your leader has to also echo that every minute. You can't have a captain rocking up having a bad day and shitting on everyone, because then you're not winning games.
Yeah. And I think that's that part. When you're talking about team sports, the similarities in terms of business, even family dynamics to sport. And having experienced team sport, even individual sports, still need a team around them to be able to do. And it's being able to have those people feel the acknowledgement of their role and their position and how they do it, that they are the most important person at that time. Everyone is the most important person. And the more we create that culture around that, we're all the most important people in here, because whether it's your title of being the CEO or owner or whatever it is, to the person that's cleaning the toilets.
Yep.
Different sort of to the level, right?
Yep.
So the more we're feeling the importance of our role, and because the wheels need to turn, and they need all of the factors to turn, and the more that they actually link together, one broken link can bring the business down.
Of course.
Can bring the life down, can bring the family down. We experience it a hell of a lot with the broken homes. There's only one link that usually is the deciding factor. It's not only two or three, sort of four sort of factors that go into sort of a family dynamic that brings something down. It's usually one person, right? But because maybe they're not feeling acknowledged, or they're not feeling safe, they're not feeling like they're sort of contributing, their identities at hit, or they're actually just saying, because it's not, that's the outcome, right? But if people are understanding the cause of why they got to that point, then there'll be less terrible dynamics.
Yeah. And I think it's really important too to make sure that when there's time to celebrate, that you're celebrating together as well.
Yeah.
And we talk about team sports versus individual sports. I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I compete rarely. I haven't competed for years. But even then, you train, you go out and you compete on your own. But I take every guy that I've ever trained with me.
Yeah.
I'm not there doing me. Yeah. I'm doing every minute that I've trained with every one of the boys at the club over 2 or 3 years. And so if I win, that's not just my victory, because I'd be nothing without them.
Yep.
So it's acknowledging the fact that business will have wins, sporting teams will have wins, individuals will have wins. That's when that gratitude thing needs to come to the surface, where you look around and you go, well, I'm thankful for everyone that helped me get here. Yeah. And that is then what also instills in those people around you the recognition that we are actually a team. We refer to ourselves here as the inside family.
Yep.
And that's not a throwaway line. That's something that we always try and make sure that we emphasise. We want everyone to feel like we're part of a family. Talk about anything that's going on, if you need support, if you need time. And, the Never Alone Foundation is one of those things that I think does that beautifully. Given that we've got a couple of key important events and dates coming up, how can people reach out to or be involved in Never Alone and some of the activities that are on the way?
So we've got the walk coming up, which is a big one. So World Suicide Prevention Day, that is on September 10th around Albert Park Lake. So we're calling it Laps for Life type sort of thing. So people can walk for 1 lap, they can do 2 laps, they can do 10 laps. Whoever they feel comfortable enough to actually sort of what they need to strive for, right? And the walk is always about, so it used to be called March With Me to the walk. So now it's called the Never Alone Walk. Just in line with who we are now, right? So the walk is always about creating conversation pieces along the journey. and creating the journey together, right? So having people walk together is amazing. You know, you can get on the neveralone.org.au site and, you know, follow the links and you get to the, you know, participate by yourself.
Yeah, we'll have all the links and everything on this,
through.
yeah.
And then it's just sort of reaching out and saying, okay, as an organisation, what we're able to deliver is being able to sort of help deliver a mental health framework and understandings and acceptance and acknowledgement and conversation pieces so that organisations, whether it be, as I said, from sport and community right through to corporate, to say, okay, this is the opportunities that we can give. We're not your answer. We help you just understand the conversation pieces that can create more of what we call a support awareness organisation. Mm-hmm. So, you know, corporates, when we talk about corporates, majority of corporates have an EAP, right? But this will throw you a little bit.
Go.
Industry standards for uptake of an EAP is 3 to 5%.
What's an EAP, just for people?
Employee Assistance Program.
Yep.
So Employee Assistance Program is the psychology or sort of service that is support service that is provided to staff, paid for by the business.
Okay.
Okay, so it's an accessibility of the service.
Yep.
Very privileged to have that opportunity because if you try and get into a psychologist as a public member of life,
very hard.
Very, very difficult to get to it and where it's available to you. So what we're trying to help people understand, so 3 to 5% is the industry standard uptake. Mm-hmm. So there's 100 people in a business, 3 to 5 of those people will uptake that service in any 1 year. 1 in 4 people, so mental health diagnosis. Mm-hmm. 1 in 2 people in their lifetime will have a mental health diagnosis. The 1 in 6 people are actually showing have a mental health diagnosis related to an anxiety disorder. You know, the stats go on. Mm. So the fact that the stats are so high, but the services being taken up, shows me one thing: people don't trust the system. Yeah. So what we try to do at an organisation is actually trying to work with the support services that are available to businesses to create whatever, like an EAP awareness. Mm-hmm. This is the reason why we need to get to the support. Hopefully, as I said, people aren't taking up the service because they don't need it.
Yeah.
But the fact is that, as I said to you, the fact is 1 in 4 are working through the fact that they have a mental health diagnosis in any 1 year. Mm. So why aren't people actually accessing the service that's available to them? And the fact that there's the support services that people can't get into, why is there such a disconnection around it all? So what we do as an organisation, as I said, we have the resources, we're working with other organisations to make sure that we're all sort of pulling in the same direction, and making sure that the support services that are available to them are being accessed without the fear, or without the burden, or without the judgment that's coming from, talk about leaders, because people don't usually access a service because they're scared of what it might mean for their place in the business.
Right.
It's a huge part of it.
Yeah.
So we've got to normalise that process, get to the fact that this is just support, this is the service available. Because if I'm, someone's living the life of a undiagnosed mental health diagnosis, and they're actually needing a support service, no matter whether it just be literally a venting process for something, to be able to work through, or the fact that they're actually down the track on their continuum, and they're sort of in that sort of crisis or, semi-crisis process. Whatever the service needs to be available, we need to make sure that we have that conversation as a leader, as a business, as a person on the ground, normalise the process to say, okay, these are the things I need to do with this. This is the avenue I need to get to. But bringing it back down to, as I said, the tools and activities that we need to be able to access, not as a blueprint, but as an opportunity. Opportunity is everything in life, and being able to open yourself to opportunities, hopefully we make it a little bit better. Yeah.
A question I sometimes ask people, if you could have a half an hour conversation, we won't do the full half an hour conversation, but if you were to have a conversation with 14-year-old Lance, what would you say?
Oh, I get asked this a lot. It's not the 14-year-old, it's usually like a 12-year-old or even a 20-year-old or whatever. If I just have a conversation with the younger Lance, what would I say? It would be about just keep going.
Yep.
You're all right, mate.
Yeah.
And it's not the genuine, oh, you're all right, mate, keep going sort of thing. It's the fact that what you're doing for yourself needs to work. You need to make it work, and just keep being yourself as opposed to being what other people want you to be.
Yeah.
Which is, to try to tell a 14-year-old that that's a difficult one. I would say, looking at the fact of, be careful with your relationships.
Yep.
Yeah. Understand what relationships are for you. I think it's a really big one.
Particularly as a young man.
Yeah.
Because having friends is really important, and sometimes they're not the best friends for you, right? Like they might not necessarily be the best influence.
But you don't know that until it's not.
Correct.
Yeah. So you don't know that someone's at a poor influence on you, or they're having a detrimental impact on your life until they're not there anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Or until you've made that decision. For me, those people are in your life at a certain reason for a certain time for a certain reason. And it's not until later on that we become understanding of why they were there or what their purpose was.
Yeah.
I probably it was, wash your hair more, that sort of thing. Back in the day, I had the curls going on, so it was, listen to your mum and dad.
Yeah.
I had a pretty challenging childhood with my dad.
Yep.
And I think more I look back on it now, what I would say to him is that, say to myself as a kid growing up, would be that Dad's here for you. He's not your enemy. Grew up thinking Dad was the enemy, which is
I can relate to that.
Relate to that. Understand.
I can relate to that.
So, and that's what we do as young kids as well. You either have a really positive relationship with them growing up, or you don't. There's no sort of middle ground.
Yeah.
And I've said this to many people in my life as who I am. I'm not the enemy here. I'm your person. I can be your person, whatever you want that person to look like.
Yeah.
So and I hats off to my dad. My dad was he's a superstar. As I said before, he played Socceroos. Automatic recognition of what people think my dad should have been is because he was a superstar sort of soccer player. Blah blah blah. But Dad was the most caring, loyal, staunch person to his family that there ever was. Misunderstood.
Yeah.
Misunderstood is one way to think about my dad and the experiences that we had growing up, and even to today. But he's shown me in terms of how to be a dad, whether it was from doing not what he did or doing what he did sort of thing. My greatest fear growing up was that I was going to be my dad.
Yeah.
But my greatest appreciation of what I'm going to be in my life is to be what my dad was about. Not to be not to be him, to be what he was about.
And if you found that point of view particular, and I don't have children, so I don't experience life from that point of view, but similarly, the older that you get and you start to deal with life's challenges and understand how hard it actually is, it's very easy to then look back and go, even for their mistakes, I know they were trying to do the best that they could do at the time.
Yep.
So whilst, and particularly with the therapy that I work through, it's managing the difference between, it's okay to have a little bit of anger. It's okay to hold on to a little bit of like upset because, things that happened. But know that they were only doing the best that they could do with the tools they had at the time.
And the opportunities that they had to do it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's the big thing. So, Dad worked 2 jobs, he'd do all that sort of stuff. He was, but the biggest learning that, the biggest learning that I've taken from my experiences from my mum and my dad is about the ability to be present. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that I try to be with my boys is I am involved.
Yeah.
Some people probably think that I'm too involved, but I don't think you can be too involved. Because I want them to create an opportunity that they feel safest. And I bring this back to what before. I want to create opportunities for my kids where they feel safest so they can perform as best as they possibly can for themselves, not for anybody else.
Yeah.
So, I'm involved in all the things I try to go to. I'm 95% at all their activities, all the things, coming kicks to the footy, playing in the backyard, being a monster, doing all these sorts of things. Nice monster, not a scary monster.
Yeah.
Taken to the park or whatever it might be. I think the biggest thing that we forget in life is that we become so busy being busy that we forget to be present for what life's about.
Definitely.
And that's our community. You bring it back to your people, right? So you compete in all those sorts of things, but your community is what actually drives you to do it. Your most important community is your first five.
Yeah.
We'll call it, right?
Yeah.
So your people. So we talk about your crew, we talk about that sort of stuff. But who's the people that you do life with, and why do you do it? My life's all about my kids. And, I get emotional on my kids because, I always bring it back to the fact that 12 years ago I nearly died again.
Yeah.
And it's perspective of what life's about.
Yeah.
It's, even Ben Cunnington from North.
Yep.
He talked about the fact of coming back from the cancer and playing again. It's given me a greater perspective of life, what life's about. Okay, so he has the energy for what he needs to have the energy for now. And that's his family. Yeah, so it's different ways people do differently. But it's, we've got to do this together, I reckon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buddy, that brings us to sort of the end.
Oh, wow.
That was an hour. So
Was it?
Yeah.
No
So
way.
if you can't tell how long it is, then we know it was a good one.
Yeah.
Again, I want to thank you for being here. I also want to thank you for being, a motivation and inspiration to me at a time when I needed it. I love you, man. I think the work that you're doing is sensational. I'm always, eager to help and get involved. We're going to do some stuff with the team this afternoon to sort of get them thinking along the same lines. But for anyone listening at home, get around the Never Alone Foundation.
Yep.
They're doing amazing work. Lance, you've turned your life around, and you couldn't be commended anymore.
Appreciate it.
It's brilliant to watch.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate the love.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, brother.
Ta.